A night at the theater takes a bizarre turn.
The 2002 Moscow theater siege was ended by pumping aerosolized fentanyl through the HVAC ducts. The poison gas killed over 100 innocent people and terrorists. Since then, there have been multiple reports of terrorist cells planning to use aerosolized fentanyl to attack buildings here in the homeland. In this video, we get expert advice from Dr. Jennifer Stankus and counterterrorism SME Mike Sterling on what you can do if you find yourself on the X during an aerosolized fentanyl attack.
It's not bombs or bullets, but a silent secret weapon that could turn this rescue mission into a massacre.
And we're back. And today we're joined by Dr. Jennifer Stankus. Thanks for being here, Jen. And our in-house mad bomber, Mike Sterling. We've had a couple previous videos where we've been discussing fentanyl, essentially used as a WMD against us here in the homeland. But before we dive into that, we want to mention this game called Conflicted. So they have a number of card decks, so 10 or 12 decks, something like that. And the way that this game is played, and this is all survival scenarios, post-apocalyptic scenarios. So if the three of us were playing, I would shuffle the deck, pull a card, read a question. Jen would answer it, Mike would answer it, I would answer it last. And then as a group, we'd vote on who had the best answer. Then I'd give the deck to Jen. She would shuffle it, pull a card, and we keep repeating the process. And at the end of the game, whoever got voted the winner of the most hands would win the game. This is a really interesting concept because it gives you mental reps to consider SHTF situations in advance while you still have your wits about you. And as Mike has pointed out, this is a very interesting way of vetting people as far as their morality and do you really want them in your group, because some of the questions are pretty crazy. What we're going to do is we're just going to shuffle the deck, read off a question, and then we'll answer the question at the end of this video. All right. You are bugging out by foot and you see a crashed prison bus. Inmates are inside, stuck trying to get out. The bus is on fire and they are begging for help. Do you use your axe to break the windshield glass and let them out, or will you let the inmates die? And this, of course, is in a post-apocalyptic scenario. We'll come back to that at the end of this episode of Survival Dispatch News and see what your answers are. All right, so let's dive in here. So on the last episode of Survival Dispatch News, we had Keith Graves on, and we discussed fentanyl in an aerosolized form being pumped in through HVAC ducts to kill people. And this has already been done. It was done in 2002 in the Moscow theater siege. The Chechens had seized it. I think around 900 people were in the theater, and the Russians ended it by pumping aerosolized carfentanil and remifentanil into the building, killed the terrorists, but also killed a bunch of innocent civilians. What was your comment, Mike, on the FSB?
FSB doesn't care as long as it's over with. They're willing to throw away 33% of the hostages. They drop a ball.
Good thing to be aware of if you happen to find yourself in Russia, right? So I want to address a couple things really quickly. In the past two videos that we've done on fentanyl being used as a WMD, all of the information is already out there. It's all open source intel. And not only is it open source intel, it's also been used by the bad guys overseas already. So Iran has used the drone swarm software to attack Saudi Arabia. Fentanyl has been aerosolized and used as a weapon. Nothing that we're covering is giving the terrorists any ideas. Request to all of you hall monitors and Karens, stop polluting the comment section with your crap that we're giving people ideas that they could use against us. We're doing no such thing. We're raising awareness. Security through obscurity doesn't work. Awareness does. Stop with that malarkey.
No, don't stop. Please don't stop. I love picking fun at you in the comment section. Everybody else, jump on.
See, you had to go there, Mike. Here's the next couple things that I want to cover. We had somebody in the comment section of the F-bomb video say that we were idiots because we had told people you can get free fentanyl. We never said any such thing. We said you can get free Narcan in almost every single state. So put down the crack pipe, put down the syringe, get your head wrapped around the fact that we're not dummies and we didn't suggest that you can get free fentanyl. The next winner comment, the next comment that's a real winner was that somebody stated that we were spreading false information and recommending Narcan to treat a fentanyl overdose because Narcan is for opiates. Newsflash. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, and Narcan is the compound, the drug that's used to treat an overdose. There's that.
There's the award for the person who did that.
Yeah. No, really. Did someone actually say that? That's just...
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
We have some great followers. But the comment sections lately has been polluted by a bunch of belligerent keyboard warriors talking out of their ass completely. Just like pardon my French, just like the asshole who said that we were out of line stating that cartels would work with Hezbollah, which they've been doing for 30 years, because the cartels have morals, don't they? These are the same people who put people in vats of acid while they're alive and cut up body parts while they're alive. Yes, they have morals. Okay. There's a couple more asinine comments, but we'll get off of that topic. And
if I'd have known we were going to be doing this, I would have put booze in my coffee.
Do you want premium ad-free content? Duh. Content that's not censored by big tech, of course. Well, with SD Insider, you can get behind the scenes and a whole lot more. Link in the description.
In the living room, I have a bicycle horn that's in my recliner, and my wife bought it for me for Christmas 4 or 5 years ago, because I'd be reading news on my laptop and I'd be going, oh my God, like, who believes this bullshit? So she got me the horn so that now when I read something that's outrageous, I just honk the horn. It's very cathartic, makes me feel better. Then she asked me, what insanity are you reading today? And I tell her. So I may introduce the horn to Survival Dispatch News, by the way, because there's certainly cause for using it at times. So let's get into the meat.
If they keep it up, we may just have to have an actual once a week one of these stinkers of the week.
Yeah, well, we could probably do it every day. So anyway, all right, enough of that. Let's get down to the crux of the matter here. And Jen, the reason we asked you to join us, not only are you a regular, of course, but being an MD, we wanted to get your input on some of this stuff. So let me paint a scenario for you, which picks up where we left off in the last video with Keith Graves, Don Mann, Mike, and myself. So terrorists are pumping aerosolized fentanyl through the HVAC system in a building, office building, skyscraper, shopping mall, whatever the case may be. And you start to feel intoxicated, and you notice that people who are in closer proximity to HVAC vents and diffusers are hitting the deck. The protocol that was recommended by that panel that we had was to administer Narcan to yourself immediately and to put a gas mask on. And we've got some stuff to show, but I want to hear your opinion first. If you were in a building and you started to feel intoxicated and you saw people hitting the deck, where would your mind go first, and what would you do to react?
You don't know what it is, first of all, but with regard to fentanyl or carfentanil or any of those things, obviously naloxone or Narcan is the antidote for that. Keep in mind that it is a very brief antidote, so you can't just take that and stick around for a long time. The other thing is that not knowing what it is doesn't really matter. You're not going to hurt yourself by taking Narcan. We give it to people who come in altered all the time, just as part of our protocol. Like, this could be an opioid overdose, especially with pinpoint pupils. Lots of things can cause those things, but you're not going to hurt yourself by taking it.
Yeah, let's just be clear for our audience. That's in your capacity as an emergency room physician, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So what I would say is a couple of things. One is that it doesn't take a whole lot of exposure to have a fatal outcome. So this idea that this can be aerosolized and affect a lot of people and kill a lot of people is not outside the realm of possibility, as we know from prior incidents. So what does it do? So why would you start feeling like a little out of it, a little confused, whatever? So the way that these opioids or synthetic opioids like fentanyl, for that person who is unaware that fentanyl is in fact considered an opioid, is that it acts on the respiratory centers in your brain. So what happens is your respiratory drive is knocked out. This doesn't cause cardiopulmonary arrest. It causes a respiratory arrest, which can lead to cardiopulmonary arrest. But the first thing that happens is you may start to have a decreased amount of respirations, considering what you need, right? So you're going to start dropping your oxygen saturation levels because your body's not respirating enough to circulate oxygen.
So pulse ox level from a smartwatch.
Yeah, that could help. What does that lead to? That leads to hypoxia, progressive hypoxia. And what does that lead to? That can lead to confusion. As Don Mann could tell you when he was up on Everest, what is one of the first things that you see in someone who has high altitude sickness? It's confusion. Why? Because their brain isn't getting enough oxygen. So if you notice that and you see people dropping, I agree with you. A good idea is to use some Narcan on yourself and get away from what you're being exposed to. First two things. Exactly. So one of the other things that you have to keep in mind is that Narcan does work, but it's not like a one time it works, you're done. So Narcan, if you give Narcan, first of all, you may not get enough. So in a really high level exposure, one dose of that, you may need 10 doses of that to reverse someone. But let's say that you take it and you're like, oh, I'm good. And you put on your little mask and you go over and you're trying to help people. First of all, the way you help someone in respiratory arrest is by doing rescue breathing. You can't really do that with a mask. You can get them out and you can administer Narcan, but you're not going to be able to do rescue breath. And they're going to need this pretty quick because Narcan doesn't work for 2 to 3 minutes. So just because you give yourself Narcan, you may have still gotten a toxic exposure and you may go down too. So this idea of you can do Narcan and then go rescue a bunch of people, I don't know about that.
I'm Jason Salyer with Survival Dispatch. As a Survival Dispatch insider, you'll be able to gain the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. They'll provide crucial information on such things as stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans. You will receive specific actionable plans. Visit survivaldispatch.com to get started.
We've shown these on screen already, and Dr. Michael Fabian's a friend of mine, called in a script for these to Publix, and then we went and picked them up for free. One of the downsides to it that I will mention is that it shows up on your records for medications that you have. And somebody who accesses those records who's not familiar with you may think that you're a drug user and you had these for that purpose. Obviously, that's not the case for me, but realistically, how many of these should we have in our GHB EDC bags? We have 2 in each of our bags between my wife and I. Now I'm feeling like that's not enough.
So it depends on where you are and what kind of circumstances you're talking about. So first of all, what is the dose on that? A lot of times it's 2 milligrams. Sometimes it's 4 milligrams. What is the dose on that?
4 milligrams.
Obviously you want the higher. So when someone comes into the emergency department, there are times when we give like multiple doses before we see someone kind of turn around. The other thing, like I said, is that it's very short acting. So even if you give someone Narcan, they still need to go to the emergency department because they may need a lot more. They may need to be on a Narcan drip. So in terms of answering your question, you need enough to get yourself out of the situation. So it depends on where you are. What are the resources available in your immediate vicinity? That obviously the more people involved and the farther away from help you are, the more you need.
So a quick question, and Mike had touched on this. Mike knows more than I do, but when you treat somebody who comes into the ER, is it IV or intramuscular? And then Mike was doing some research as far as one of them has to be kept cool, refrigerated. Is that correct?
The beautiful thing about these, I would recommend you for civilian purposes, you can either, there are injectors and then there are the nasal ones. I think the nasal ones are way easier. People are more apt. They work just the same. They both work in about 2 or 3 minutes. I think personally the nasal is better. It's just easier, and people are more inclined to do it. For whatever reason, they're afraid to jab people.
Doc, I went down the rabbit hole for the auto injectors, and unlike the duodote systems that the military uses for like nerve agent antidotes, these IM meds are not meant to be. They're not meant to be carried in room temperature. They go bad pretty quickly at room temperature, so they're supposed to be kept in a the drug cooler box on the boo boo bus.
Yeah, that is a no-go.
All the IM IV drugs are pretty much out at this point. Now, one thing that I do want to throw out here, Chris, that you need to remember, if instead of stacking 10 sets of nasal hits inside your bag, you've got to remember this is a self-rescue medication. Keep your focus on this whole thing, right? It's just a self-rescue thing. Maybe 2 apiece would be it. Okay. You're hitting yourself just to get yourself to the responder. Okay.
Okay.
To get yourself out of that environment.
I could see having more, like if you have kids or family
Right.
members, whatever.
Right. I'm talking per person.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking per person.
Yeah.
Also,
So
I don't know
back
about,
up for
I
a
don't know
second.
about
What's the recommendation per person for these that you should have in your EDC or GHB?
one, maybe two.
Okay,
A
two
piece.
per person. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
I
Okay.
think that's reasonable. The thing is, if you have such a high exposure, you're in deep doo-doo.
Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the amount that you need, and you can't predict that. You can't know that. And I think that the issue is, again, is awareness, like, wow, I don't feel good. What's going on? And then trying to figure out what's going on in your environment. Is this something I need to use? And if you think, just like you said, if you think that you need this, do not hesitate, because you will go down so fast. It happens fast. So the sooner you can get that on board, the better. And again, it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes to really start to have its effect. Once you're like, oh, I'm in deep trouble. You're right. You're in deep trouble. And it's
Keith Graves dropped some really interesting information on us, where he said that when he was active duty he was a narc, essentially, that they were able to get convictions against people because these people were falling out. They gave them Narcan and it brought them back around. And when it got to court and the judge asked, well, how do you that they taken fentanyl or an opiate? And he said, well, if you give somebody Narcan and they come back from it, that's exactly what they were exposed to.
right.
So there's a new one out. Keith turned me onto this the other day, and I did the research on it, called OpV, and it is nalmefene, and
Okay.
it's a spray, 2.7 milligram auto spray, just like the Narcan sets. Looking at this, how Narcan is a very short duration drug. It's good for maybe 30 minutes or so. This is apparently good for 8 hours. It's a lot better for that sort of thing. So as a rescue med to get yourself out of there, especially if you've got an acute dosage on this stuff, good time to be able to bail out of there with one of these. This might be better if you can get your hands on them.
Do me a favor and spell that out for our audience so that I can write it down as well.
Right. It is OPVEE.
Jen?
So I was just going to say, with the fentanyl crisis in the country, the push for people having access to free naloxone or Narcan is really high, and those are pretty readily available. Not sure about the other thing that I would say is that if you are exposed, there are some things that the medical system does very well. This is one of them. Needing to have some observation and potentially even being on a Narcan drip is really important. So just because you have this, I know a lot of people are anti-medical establishment, but this is a time where you really need to go in.
I want to make sure I clarify this with both of you. You're in a building, somebody's pumped aerosolized fentanyl through the HVAC. You've done your due diligence. You took a shot of Narcan. You had a gas mask of some sort, which we'll talk more about in a second.
Or anything you can put over your nose and mouth so you're not breathing it in.
Right.
So yes, but keep in mind that the mucous membranes of the eye actually take up the fentanyl even faster than your respiratory system, even faster.
Yeah,
right. But what's the percentage of us that are actually walking around inside of a center carrying a gas mask?
It is something, but just keep in mind, just like with airborne pathogens, your eyes soak those up just as well or better than your lungs do. So
right.
Well,
the point that I'm making here is you're already bit. Okay, you've already got a dose. Now I understand you don't want to get more of a dose. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to exit as fast as is possible to get into a clean air environment.
That's where I was going with this. So people are dropping. You're feeling intoxicated. You take a shot of Narcan. You have a full face mask, tactical mask, respirator on hand. It's still not safe to go help somebody else. You've got to get out of the building, correct?
Grab your people, get out.
100%. Now, and then the other thing is, how do you help someone? Because that's equally important, right? So what happens? Why do people die with a fentanyl overdose? It's because their respiratory drive gets knocked down. They stop breathing. And then within a matter of minutes, their heart is going to start to get really irritated from the lack of oxygen. Your body's still circulating blood, but as it's cycling through, it's the oxygen's getting pulled out with each cycle. And eventually your going to start to drop your oxygen saturations. That takes a few minutes, but as soon as that happens, it happens pretty fast. And then you're going to go into cardiac arrest as well. So if someone goes down, you see them go down, they're just not breathing or they're breathing very shallowly. That's when you do the rescue breaths for them. And then obviously, if they don't have a pulse, that's when you do CPR. If they're down for a long time, if they're down without a pulse for 5, 8, 10 minutes, if you are able to bring them back to where they have their own circulation, they will have an anoxic brain injury that they will not recover from well. So in a mass casualty situation like this, you have to choose. Is there a person with a pulse who's just not breathing? Is there a person who's shallowly breathing? You need to take the person who has the highest salvage rate. And
this is starting to sound like it should be another card in the deck.
But it's true.
Triage. You have to triage.
You can only do so much. And unfortunately, in this situation, if someone is exposed and they're still exposed, the treatment is to do respirations for them. What does that mean? It means you have to get them out of the environment before you can do that. Otherwise, everyone goes down.
Yeah, because what's the very first question that you always ask in a medical emergency? You can't get somebody back to life if your life is in danger.
Correct.
Got to extricate. You've got to get out.
So it's just like when a police officer calls for help for a suspect, the first thing that those EMS guys say is the scene safe? Am I safe to go in to help this person? And same thing with you. Is the scene safe? Can you do this safely? And these are not easy decisions. These are heart-wrenching, horrific decisions that you have to make. But at the end of the day, you have to be safe before you can help others.
Let's kind of move to the next phase here. And we showed a couple of these masks in the last episode, but this mask is from Parcel Safety. They don't pay us anything. They do send us masks periodically. And it has these small pucks that are, as I mentioned in the last episode, really same type of quality as a drywall mask essentially, but full face, so protecting your eyes. Just walk us through briefly, if someone has this in their EDC bag or has this in their get home bag, there are certain things like it being deformed and not getting a good seal, beards, the vents, the one-way vents in them. Can you give us the mask 101 lesson on this stuff?
Yeah, sure. For starters, let's hold up that filter. What you have there, you have a P100 filter, which is basically a dust filter. All right.
Okay.
It's not going to stop a whole lot, but in this case, it will stop a physical dust, in this case, fentanyl. Right now, this is a NATO standard CBRN filter right here. Okay, this is good down to 6 micron. All right, this is going to stop absolutely everything, but you'll notice how much bulkier it is. All right, so one does not do what the other one will do. This is good against both dry contaminants and wet contaminant, whereas you're only going to be good for a dry contaminant with that.
Okay.
So here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. Most of the time, if you own a gas mask, you don't have a whole lot of experience with a gas mask, and you've definitely not had to maintain a gas mask. We talk about full face shields. All right, having a full face shield, it's going to cut way back on the incidence of you freaking out in your gas mask because of claustrophobia. Right, because gas mask claustrophobia is a real thing. If you're just keeping your mask inside your car, right, it's hot in the car, things like that, your filters are going to go bad faster. Now, they're going to be fine for the fentanyl. All right, but they are going to go bad faster. Now, but the one problem is you have let me get this flipped around. And this is a military surplus MCU-2P, real good system made by MSA. So the one thing that I like to bring up is you've got these nice little valves in the system. I don't know if anybody can see. There we go. You got your nice little valves up in there, right? And these are nothing but little silicone flaps, okay? Very thin, about the thickness of 3 sheets of paper. They get hot, they will eventually deform. It is a one-way valve. It's meant to be a one-way valve so that you can blow out, but not pull in through it. Now it gets deformed. You're going to draw air in every time you push air out. And the problem is, this is your outserts down here. Your air is exiting through all of these additional ports. If you've got those deformed, not only are you pushing out, but you're pulling in through the exact same port. So you have to maintain your mask. An APR has to be maintained appropriately, or it's not going to be any good. Also, one thing I always point out, this is the thing that I pointed out to you, Chris, was, what does that say?
Oh, you're asking the guy who's got bad vision. Come on now.
M, right? That's the size. All gas masks are not the same in size.
Right.
Virtually nobody actually sizes their gas mask appropriately. Now, those parcels that you get, they're one size fits most.
Okay.
All right. That's not good. A good, properly sealed mask is a key thing. Now, we get to beards, any facial hair, the like. Every one of my kits has to have a razor on board. Right? We keep an electric razor in there because if we're going to go into a hazmat environment, everybody shaves it all off. It's all coming off. If you get any kind of that kind of stuff into your beard, it's going to wick its way up onto your skin inside the mask, and now you're going to be breathing it. Very, very bad deal. And I think this is all stuff that I guess I'm probably going to wind up needing to cover in those classes on Survival University for us
Right.
all. I guess I'm going to have to actually break down and do these courses.
So,
And Mike, one thing that I would point out too is a lot of people do have N95s that are available to them, but just like with the mask you were pointing out, we have to get fitted. And I think I went through 5 types of N95s before I found one that was correctly fitted for me. Just because you buy an N95 and you put it on doesn't mean that it's going to work correctly. And by the way, it needs to cover your nose.
Right. Exactly.
so back to your eyes.
I think the biggest point that I need to make in a situation like this is speed is life. All right. If you're already bit, I'm already contaminated. All right. I have to assume that my face is already contaminated. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this on my face. Well, the contamination is still inside my face. You need to decontaminate your face before you put on your mask. Now, anything that you can do, throw a t-shirt over your face just to avoid getting more into there, but you've got to exfil. You've got to get out of that contaminated area as fast as you possibly can. So rescue meds, exfil. As absolutely fast as you can. Grab your kids, grab your family, grab your friends, whatever you got to do. You've got to get to that fresh air first.
The analogy I would make is you're in a house fire, you get caught on fire, you douse yourself out with a fire extinguisher and you don't leave. Nothing's going to change. Like
right.
you can use that fire extinguisher, but you need to get out. You need to get out of the fire. And same thing here.
That is absolutely spot on, Doc. You've got to exfil. You've got to get to fresh air. And then the first thing that you got to do once you're out into fresh air, decon. Do not, under any circumstances at all, do not use hand sanitizer or handy wipes or anything with any kind of alcohol, especially in one of these situations, because what is it going to do?
So a couple of things. One is that it makes your skin more porous, allowing for more of the toxin to come in. It dilates your blood vessels, allowing faster uptake of that toxin. And the third, the alcohol actually, as it evaporates, can actually concentrate the toxin that's there. So hand sanitizer is not going to do it. There's a reason why every single emergency department in the country that I know of, or at least that I've worked in, has a decontamination port before they come into the emergency department. If someone is contaminated with anything, they go through decon procedures before we will treat them, even if they're in critical condition. Why? Because you can't risk taking everyone out.
So let me just make sure that I have the steps in correct order here. So there's been this terrorist attack. They're pumping aerosolized fentanyl through the HVAC system. You see people hitting the deck that are closer to the vents, the diffusers. You're feeling intoxicated. You administer a dose of Narcan, you put your mask on and get outside as fast as you possibly can.
The other thing that I would say is time is brain, and these people are going to stop breathing quickly. The faster you can get off a 911 call, the faster, and you need to tell them too, like, look, people are dropping. We think it's fentanyl. You guys need to come in with your full masks and gear. They can at least get in and get people out faster. If you're talking about wanting to save as many people as possible, you need to get the information out immediately and tell people how to protect themselves immediately.
Tell you what, so this is from personal experience. You gotta say because the police are going to be the very first ones to show up. Try to keep them from being blue canaries. And we used to call them that all the time. Cops will rush in because to the man with a hammer, every problem winds up looking like a nail. They go in gun drawn. guys, stop.
No, I would characterize it differently. These are really good people who want to save lives.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But every time I've seen this, the cops are rolling in and dying in droves. Every exercise that I've ever done on this kind of stuff, and the firefighters will stand back and go, whoop, hang on a second, everybody. One of the things I would just say is once the cops show up, let them know this is a hazmat situation. You got to get hazmat here.
Look, and people are generally good in my view. Like they want to help people and they're like, oh, well, I can just hold my breath, run in, grab some, come out. Again, this is going to get in your eyes just as fast as your lungs. There's no escaping the concept of having to stay safe, and just having people understand, what does it mean to be safe? It means that you stay out of that building unless you have the proper gear. If you have the proper gear and you're fine, go in, start dragging people out into fresh air. Whatever you have to do, great, but make sure you're safe first.
That's where the mask comes from.
Right.
The national response time for the cops right now is hovering around 12 minutes. And some smaller forces in smaller jurisdictions, you're looking at 5 or 6 minutes in that time frame. If all of this is happening and I've administered the Narcan, I've got my mask on, I've run outside, if I feel better by the time the cops get there, which is probably another 2 or 3 minutes, you need to communicate that information to the cops, right? You've got to say, hey, I took Narcan and it pulled me out of it. Give them some sort of, evidence, for lack of a better term, that it was a fentanyl related or opioid related attack.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Intelligence is power.
So
I'll tell you what, I think the scariest thing on the planet is knowing that there's a toxin that's killing people and not knowing what it is. That's even like, wow, I'm not running in there. Like, I don't mean to, and that's not selfish. That's smart. And it's the way to save the most people. So get it out of your mind that it's selfish not to go in. It's just one more person who's going to die.
From a doctor's perspective, and I'm pretty sure I already know what Mike's answer is on this. When, again, these are not a super expensive mask, $97 if memory serves me right, something a little higher quality that takes the NATO filters closer to, say, $250. What's the concern with this one as far as the tinted shields is concerned, Jen? Like, would this not make it really hard for somebody in your position to get a gauge on the person's well-being?
100%. Like, I need to see, are they breathing? I need to see their eyes. I need to see, and not only that, but to me, if as a former law enforcement, I see that, I see terrorists. Like, that makes me scared. Like, is that a bad person? I want to be able to see their face.
So if people are going to get masks and put them in their EDC or their GHB bags, try to get one with a clear shield.
I mean,
like
it
Mike's
looks
showing.
cool. It looks cool. It looks like a fighter pilot. But the other thing about that tinted thing is that there's a good probability that you're going to be in a low light situation, and you need as good of vision as you can possibly get.
So next point, and Mike, you've touched on it offline in our conversation. So I take one of these masks, I throw it my GHB bag, and it's been in there for months or a year or whatever the case may be, and the face gets deformed. What can you do to counteract that from happening?
Usually what I'll wind up doing is the mask that I keep in my truck, I will usually bring inside. I'll usually bring it inside for a full night once a month or so. And the military has, right? Yeah. I bought like a stack of like 30 of these things. I think I got them on eBay or something like that. You put your mask inside of it while it's nice and warm, get everything correct, get all the straps in the appropriate places, and then let it cool overnight.
That goes on the backside, right? To maintain.
It goes on
gaskets?
The interior, yes.
Yeah.
And what it'll do is it'll straighten everything out to include the nose cup and the exterior section. And this is mostly a concern with the cheaper rubber. The more silicone that you have in the systems, like the MSA Millenniums are almost exclusively silicone now. Their deformation rate is very, very small. So not really an issue with the better quality ones, but it is a thing where you do need to keep those things in an appropriate state. So
anything though, like you get what you pay for, right? And sometimes you buy the cheaper thing, but then you end up having to buy a whole lot of that cheaper thing. Like you could get a bunch of mums.
Well, and that's one thing that is a great point that I've seen in the prepper community, that nobody's got a real good eye on, or they have no experience or education in TIC-TIM, issues, toxic industrial chemicals, toxic industrial materials, or CWM stuff. So they wind up buying a surplus mask from Czechoslovakia or Israel or something like that, and they're like, okay, that's good enough. I'm covered. Well, you're willing to pay $3,000 for a rifle, but you're not willing to pay more than $50 for a life-saving gas mask. What's the correlation there? I've never understood that, because we do this all the time. We go into toxic environments. I paid for good quality gear that is going to wind up lasting. I'll be able to pass this stuff on to my grandchildren if they want it. The gear that we use all the time, it's going to last forever, just from the way you put it. You get what you pay for. I don't have to maintain them as often. I don't have to worry about breakthrough in the seals or anything like that. That's a real problem when you get the cheap stuff. The adhesive around like the outserts on the eyes or around other components of the mask, it gets really hot. It's going to peel away. Now you got a hole through your mask. Can you fix that? No, you got to buy a new one because you bought cheap.
There's an old adage: if you pay them peanuts, they'll send you monkeys.
The other thing is that you don't want to be thinking about this. So when I go into a patient room who's got active tuberculosis that is drug resistant, I don't want to be thinking, am I safe? Like I want to go in feeling confident that it's just out of your brain and you can take care of business and do what you need to do. It's worth having the right equipment.
Totally agree. Mike and I have had this conversation, and you're a gun enthusiast like we are. And there's an element of all of us who like to collect nice things like guns in particular, but there's many people out there who collect guns and spend $0 on all the ancillary stuff, especially force multipliers. And I'd made a recommendation in one of our videos a while ago that instead of having, say, 3 carbines or 3 SBRs piled up, why don't you buy one SBR, outfit it with an IR flood, get some nods, get some body armor, all of those force multipliers. You're way better off than the guy who's got a safe full of guns and no force multipliers.
And spend $3,000 between your ears on training.
And the training, of course. So I wrote down the word canaries on this piece of paper before we started this, and then you mentioned blue canaries. And the other day, I have no reason to doubt Keith, Jen, but the other day ago, I asked him if you saw people going down who maybe were more susceptible than you are, and he stopped me. He said, unlike other drugs, there's no such thing. Like, you get exposed to this stuff, you're going down like a sack of potatoes. Maybe it's a question kind of out of the conflicted deck, but if you were working in a high rise and you had concerns over this maybe potentially happening, would an actual canary, a bird, something go down before a human would or not? Like, I'm just trying to grasp at straws here for some sort of early warning system, some sort of machine where you could do wet samples, and they were like $90,000. And
right, you got to have a physical sample to work with.
Right. And I was thinking more along the lines, could you have some sort of IoT sensor detector on the HVAC system? And apparently that's not within the realm of possibilities. But could we go back in time and put canaries in front of the diffusers?
First of all, this will horrify people. I don't even eat animals. I wouldn't use one as a guinea pig. Moreover, I'm not a vet. I have no idea, like, if this would affect like a canary more than me. Sorry, I can't answer that. But
let me. I'm going to pull. You guys keep talking.
Okay, well, again, Jen, I was just thinking when Mike or Keith mentioned how expensive these devices are, and you have to have a physical sample and all that sort of stuff. Okay, well, if we can't put sensors on the HVAC system, can we go back in time to coal mines and canaries and put a canary in front of the diffuser that's closest to your desk? I know we're way out there. We're way down the rabbit hole, way out in left field. But
here's what I'd say. I'd bring it back to something even more fundamental. It used to be, as physicians, we were good with the stethoscope. We were good with physical exam. We were good with history. Now everyone just gets a scan. Like, the technology that we use has really dumbed down medicine, in my opinion. I would go back to just this idea of when we were more primitive and more aware of ourselves, more aware of our surroundings. The biggest thing in everything, in my view, is avoidance. Like you want to avoid all the badness, whether it's a gunfight or carjacking or a toxic exposure. You want to avoid it, right? So just paying attention and like, where are you? Are you in a place that could cause this? Just paying attention to people around you. And if something isn't right or doesn't feel right, or you start not feeling right, you see other people not feeling right, just get out.
Yeah, good advice.
I just looked at the SDS on this. That's a safety data sheet. Let's see. This was tested on both rats and mice. It looks an awful lot like if it pumps in, they're going to go down at about the same rate that humans are going to go down, maybe a couple seconds faster, and that's about it.
A little innocent rodent with you. All right.
Yeah, but if he's closer to the HVAC vent than you are, now you have a caveman early warning system.
Not much.
Not much. You're buying yourself a couple seconds, and that's it.
This stuff is so light airborne. Do you guys? What was the movie? Was it Contagion? What was that movie where they started in a movie theater and someone sneezes and you watch all these things go everywhere? As a germaphobe, this was like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
That was Outbreak.
Outbreak, exactly.
Great movie too.
Same thing though. Like these particles are so small, airborne, and are distributed so fast. I don't see that as being really an effective warning system.
Well, I had these grandiose plans to patent it as like a survival dispatch survival kit, and man, you're raining all over my parade.
Sorry, man, you're not buying but a couple seconds.
From a lot of the comments, that there are a lot of people who might buy that, so you still may be in for like a big financial reward, but probably not.
Look at the bomb detectors that the Iraqi government bought. That was literally a handle with a piece of tubing on it and a couple of little LED lights. It actually did nothing. And the Iraqi government paid, I want to say, a couple $1 billion for all these things. Just out of the blue, they bought all these bomb detectors, and then we got a hold of one of them, and it was like, we took it apart and we were like, what is this? You guys got completely ripped off. And they were like, oh, no, these do a great job.
When it blows the person up and there's your sign. All right, guys.
Around too.
Is there anything else we want to add to this? Just that people can be a little bit safer in the event of a terrorist attack using aerosolized fentanyl.
Let's move to the next step, decontamination.
Okay.
Once you're out of the building, you need to decontaminate as rapidly as is possible. And just like Keith and I were discussing the other day, strip them clothes off, copious quantities of water, flush the eyes, flush the nose, flush the mouth, get everything off of you that is possible. Copious quantities of water.
And what I would say, just adding to that, what you just mentioned, is in the case of fentanyl, what is the route of entry? It's mucous membranes and the respiratory system. So your face, your nose, like, obviously, you're, as long as you're away from the source, you're not breathing it, things are going to be coming off your clothes, just like Mike said. Getting anything that has that, even your hair, like my hair, it's going to be all over this. And every time I move, it's going to be re-exposing me.
When we did the test on this mask, Denny Chapman got hosed down with tear gas, and then we tried some pepper spray as well. And the mask did what it was supposed to do until he started sweating profusely. It was a summer day here in Florida, so the heat index was way over 100. So the sweat started running down from his forehead into his eyes, and it was carrying the contaminants with him. Then he took this off because the experiment was done. But when he got in the shower, the same thing happened as well. So as the shower was washing him off, it was going into his eyes, his nose, his mouth, and everything, and it wasn't fun.
So to that point, the fact that he was getting it inside the mask through his sweat means that he did not have an appropriate seal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Probably because it wasn't sized appropriately for himself. Next, you decon while the mask is still on. The very last step of a decontamination process is removing the mask. You remove the mask, you set it into your on a set decon line, which, Doc, I'm sure you've seen this before. Mask comes off, goes into a decon line. You've held your breath and closed your eyes. You dunk your face into a hot soapy water decon. Rub your face down. Move to the next. Rinse. And then you can take a breath and open your eyes. You decon while the mask is on. That's why filters get automatically swapped out after decon, because they're wet.
All right. So enough of the fentanyl stuff. Let's get back to conflicted here. I'm going to read the question one more time, and then ladies go first. You are come on now. Jen's the one who's got like the rock star IQ, so we have to pose her. Okay. You are bugging out by foot, and you see a crashed prison bus. Inmates are inside, stuck trying to get out. The bus is on fire, and they are begging for help. Do you use your axe to break the windshield glass and let them out? Or will you let the inmates die?
First of all, I think it's pretty cool that I'm walking around with an axe.
You don't do that?
What, you don't do that normally? What?
What do you mean?
Okay. But so what is the scenario? What is going on in the world?
This is a Teotihuacan type situation. So the end of the world as we know it.
Okay.
World without
So,
world.
All right. So I actually do break the glass. And even though the people in there are potentially very dangerous, I do break the glass for a couple of reasons. One, I let them know who I am and that they need me. I have skills that a lot of them won't have. And so taking me out is not a great idea. The other thing is that these people in there, I don't know why they're in there yet, but they have skills that got them in there that may be useful in a post-apocalyptic world where they are willing to maybe take action that other people are not to survive, and they may be useful partners.
Good answer. Not surprised.
I'm going to assume that because it's a prison bus, it's either a farm work detail or it's a transfer. The good thing that we do know is that the real serious guys, they don't go in a group transport. So usually these guys are low or medium security guys. So I feel fairly confident. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to break the glass to get them out of there, and then I'm going to keep on stepping. They're more than likely going to escape to the four winds anyway, but I'm going to break the glass, and then I'm going to keep on keeping on.
That was actually what I was going to say. Not the part as far as typically the worst of the worst aren't typically in those bus details. But what I was going to say is I would knock the glass out and save them, but I would then put some distance between myself and them. And unlike Jen, I do carry a hatchet around with me everywhere I go. This is from our friends at Tops Knives. Badass equipment. Mike knows he's got a bunch of their equipment as well. So I would utilize this to break the glass, set them free, and then put distance between myself and them, because I'm not a doctor and I don't have the skills that Jen has. So
I was going to say, just like to differentiate myself in order to try to win, because I'm very competitive. What I would say is my difference is that I'm going in strength in numbers, not assuming that they're going to all take off because everyone's in deep trouble, and thinking that I'm going to form a tribe where they're grateful for me and grateful for my skills, and I'm grateful to have other people around who might have some skills that I may need.
Seriously, it's a great answer, but you bring all of the skills to the table that we don't necessarily have. We're not doctors. Mike can blow shit up and I can shoot shit up, but we can't save people like you can. So there's a big difference in skill sets there. Mike's not happy with my answer.
No, I'm neutral to it.
All right. Well, I appreciate all y'all's time, and I'm sure we'll reconvene again sometime soon.
All right, guys, stay safe, stay healthy.
Good to see you, Doc.
Likewise.
Become a Survival Dispatch Insider. We bring together survival enthusiasts and preppers to share knowledge and skills, which means you can enhance your preparedness for emergencies and ensure the safety of your community. The results you'll get: improve your emergency preparedness by learning skills and strategies from experienced preppers. Build lasting connections with like-minded individuals to share your passion for safety and readiness. Access a wealth of knowledge and resources to assist you in protecting you and your community in certain situations. Go to survivaldispatch.com to get started.